is Ryan. So Ryan has spent his entire career working in cybersecurity, which was entirely by accident. He spent 6 years at the ACSC working in the incident response team before heading up the Joint Cybersecurity Center program briefly as its national director. Currently, he's the co-founder and chief operating officer at Retrospect Labs, a security startup that specializes in cybersecurity exercises. Ryan, you all ready to go?
I sure am. Everyone can see my screen, or you guys can see my screen.
We can see your screen. You're all good.
Technology is working, which is ironic because as Ian's just noted, I am useless at technology and that's definitely not my background. So that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about today, how I kind of fell into incident response or IR, why I think it's really cool, and I guess some of the skills that you maybe need to think about, including in your IR teams, not just from a technical perspective. So just a little bit about me. I guess you guys have either read or heard the bio that Ian just very kindly read out. At the moment, I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer at Retrospect Labs, which is awesome because it means I get to live in Melbourne, which is much better, in my humble opinion, than my former job, which was one of the incident response leads at the Australian Cybersecurity Centre. But that meant that I spent 7 years in cold, wintry Canberra. Now, for those of you that are in Melbourne today, it feels like Canberra. It's about 14, 15 degrees and bloody freezing. So I'm reliving my Canberra night terrors, but I did have a really great time in Canberra at the ACSC, and it was a really, really awesome space to kick off my career in cyber and in incident response particularly. I think one of the cool things about the ACSC was actually how they did IR. So admittedly, not entirely sure how other organizations do IR at the moment, but I think the ACSC did it pretty well, although I am biased. And the ACSC really broke their incident response ops up into two kind of roles or two different functions. So we had the incident responders, who were your technical, traditional forensic analysts, looking at, images of hosts, memory dumps, that kind of thing, looking at malware, working out what the actor had done on a machine or on a network, how they could investigate it, how they could remediate it. And then we had another kind of team group of people like myself called operations coordinators, OCs. And our focus was much more on managing the incident response operation as a whole. So basically a bird's eye view of every single component of the IR op, which was pretty cool, working with the victim, managing the strategic relationships, the strategic messaging, all the comms, and basically corralling all of the troops. The ACSC's IR activities were pretty big and kind of significant. So often we'd have 30 or 40 people working full time on any one incident response activity. So it was really, really cool. It was really, really fun. Possibly the best job that I'll ever have. It was awesome. And I guess just looking at that slide there, all of those threat reports the ACSC put out, all of those incident response activities, the case studies in there are ones that I actively worked, which is really, really awesome. So what did a typical IR op look like at the ACSC? They were kind of big. So typically 4, 6, 8 months. A lot of time spent gaining visibility of the network, trying to understand what the actor had done on the network, how they'd done it, and how we could stop them from doing it again or continuing from doing it. Usually APT state-based actors, so pretty kind of, sophisticated techniques we were often investigating, although often simple things work well, as you would all know. So sometimes nothing fancy, just simple things that worked. They always had extensive access to the victim network. That was a given. By the time we got called in, typically domain level admin had already been gained. They were throughout the network, which is probably why it took us so long to kind of conduct these operations, because we had to be so thorough to really understand where they'd gone. And of course, we were dealing with really sensitive victim networks. So often government networks or systems of national interest, critical infrastructure networks, those kinds of things. We definitely couldn't afford to screw up the IR activities. We kind of know what the purpose of IR is, right? We're all here doing IR to make sure we minimize the impact of any incident. We want to stop its spread, minimize its harm, and restore services or business functions so that the organization can keep going on and keep conducting its business. And of course, we really want to know what the actor's done on the network, how they did it, the tools that they used to do it, et cetera, et cetera. Our main goal is really to keep the business operating. And I think that's a really important thing for organizations to recognize, is that IR is really an enabler for business. It's a critical function in this day and age when we're all connected to the internet. But it's a hard job. It's really tough. There's a range of actors out there. We're constantly battling them. They're highly motivated individuals, as you would all know. And they're always coming up with new techniques that we have to think about and defend against. That means new challenges. That means new things to look for, analyze and respond to. And that means we need to have kind of, the most awesome, best team in place so that we can do that. So in order to be fully awesome at IR, I think we really need a blend of tech and non-tech skills. It's probably nothing groundbreaking that I'm going to talk about tonight, but I think some of these basic things are often overlooked in IR, and we tend to just focus on that technical aspect. The tech aspect is absolutely important. It is essential. Obviously, IR doesn't exist without it, but I think there's a whole lot of other skills that we need to make sure we're incorporating into these teams. So as we've said, IR, it's really fun, really, really challenging. It's much broader than it used to be. It's not just that technical response anymore. It's increasingly, it's about the rest of the organization. It's about how you manage the media, public messaging, report to the privacy commissioner, talk to your customers, all of those kinds of things. So it really kind of makes sense when you look at IR in that broader sense that you need more than just a technical skill base to do IR properly, to really excel at it, I guess. There's no point in having someone that's really, really brilliant, really, really technically brilliant, if their brilliance isn't able to be communicated effectively out to the rest of the organization, senior decision makers, et cetera, et cetera. So I think IR is definitely a team sport. Personally, I've got no time for people who don't respect technical skills, and I've definitely got no time for people who don't respect non-tech skills. It's really important. We all need each other. And if we're going to win these kind of, battles that we're up against, we all need to support each other. So I think there's kind of, broadly speaking, 4 key skills, 5 if you're a bit like me and you're a bit cheeky, 4 key skills that we all really need to master. And these are the kinds of things that we're going to talk about to make sure your IR team is ready to excel. Obviously, communication. That is almost a given, right? You want to be able to control the information from the first minute an incident occurs. You want to control the information spread, bring people in early, keep them informed, and make sure that that they know that you're the central font of all information. To do that effectively, though, you really need to be able to talk to absolutely everyone in the organization. Senior execs, your analysts across the corporate ladder. Information is really, really useful, and you've got to make sure that they're getting the right information. You need to understand what to communicate to them, and that means you need to understand what they're going to do with the information that you're giving them. So you need to make sure you're giving the media team the right information so they can create that public messaging properly. You need to make sure that you're giving the senior exec the right information so that they can make that right business decision. That involves updating them very regularly and consistently. That really helps build trust. And if you have trust, believe me, it'll go a long, long way. People won't doubt you, and you don't want to be doubted when you're in this stressful situation of responding to an incident. I find running regular sync meetings really, really helpful. And I also find breaking them up often really, really useful. So keeping a more technical oriented sync where you can have kind of that technical problem solving discussion, and then a different, more strategic sync just for executives, the media, your legal team, et cetera, et cetera. So I would usually take the information that I was learning in that technical sync, fact check it, double check it with the technical guys so that I had interpreted it correctly, and then go and present that information to the non-technical, if you like, sync so that they could digest it and use it in the right way, and make sure that, I guess, you're communicating effectively between those groups of people. That's where formal updates comes in as a really, really useful tool. So making sure that people know when they're going to get an update, that helps stopping them constantly coming to you with questions. The frequency that you want to send those updates out really does depend, I guess, on the severity of the incident, how comfortable the organization is that you're dealing with, maybe even the maturity of the organization that you're dealing with. But I'd say certainly daily at the start of a big incident, twice daily if needs be, and then making that, letting that taper off as time goes by. It doesn't need to be constant. It's just about making sure that people know that they've got the most up-to-date and current information. I guess, ironically, we all know that in cyber, information changes really quickly. So information that's critical at the moment is what you need to really think about, what the particular pain points are for your organization, so that you can identify them early on and communicate any issues around them quickly and effectively to whoever you need to talk to. I always think it's better to bring people in, loop them in early, give them a heads up. And even if it's not something that you're 100% sure is going to occur, or whether it has occurred, if you're just warning them of the potential impacts, etc., I think that's a much better place to be rather than, oh shit, we now know this definitely did happen. But again, I think that kind of looping back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of building trust is something you can only really do if you have that trust with those people. So information can be used to build that trust, but we've all got to make sure that we kind of have that mutual respect for how we're communicating with each other and that that trust is there. So making sure we've got clear, concise, consistent and regular information for our consumers is a really, really important thing. All right. The other thing that's super important, obviously, relationship management. Starting to feel a little bit like a job application, right? It's presentation, because these are some of the kind of things that you might expect to talk about there. But I think it's really important that you have good relationships in the organization that you're working with, or your customer, the victim organization, if you can, before an incident happens. If you already have their trust, if they at least know your face, know your name, know kind of what your role is, that's going to make it a lot easier for you when you are that person to go and potentially ruin their day, their week, their month, or their year by letting them know that you've got an incident. There's nothing worse than you being constantly second guessed during an incident response activity, or being directed down a path that you know is the wrong way to go or that you don't want to go just because you don't have the trust of senior management. So making sure that you're building that trust wherever you can, whether that's internal in your own organization or with your customers, whenever you can is really, really useful. And remember that it's a two-way street, the whole relationship thing. So you've got to be able to work across every part of the organization. The IR team should absolutely be the central team when there's an incident, and you've got to make sure you've got firm control of the situation. So having relationships really, really helps you do that. Knowing who to talk to, the right people in the right roles is not going to do you any harm. It's only going to serve you really, really well. Negotiating, you're going to have some tough decisions to make during an incident response operation. That might be switching off a certain part of the network to protect the broader network. That might be shutting down, particular parts of the network that serve certain customers and really annoying those customers. It's really, really tough. So you're going to have to balance all of these different issues with the core objective of minimizing the impact of the incident. So you've got to have those relationships in place, use your excellent communication skills, as we've discussed, to make sure that you can have those difficult conversations, build those relationships over time, and really get sure that you're getting that trust from those people. And I guess all of that comes back to your ability to persuade people as well. So using the right information, negotiating with them, and basically bringing them on board, bringing them on that incident response journey so that you all get to the right goal together rather than separately, which is just not fun during an IR op. Incident response ops are really messy. They're really stressful. They're really busy. No one actually knows what's going on. So you need to make sure that people know that your IR team is absolutely elite. You're absolutely going to smash it out of the park and you're doing your very, very best. And make sure that they've got that trust and that faith in you, that you're out there doing the right thing. It's only going to help you during your IR operations to just head down, bum up, and get the work done. The ability to do strategic analysis. So definitely not talking about down in the weeds technical analysis. Again, that's super important, but more the ability to join those high level dots. So, I think I've seen that domain before, or there's a bit of a trend going on here. We had this kind of phishing activity recently, or I know, the threat environment's changed in this way, and maybe this is something we're seeing now. I heard that this energy company in Iran suffered a similar attack recently. Those kinds of, analytical finds are really, really useful. So definitely let your technical analysts do that detailed tech work, you should just be able to bring all of that together and maintain that central kind of coordination role that's so critical in an IR operation. Part of that's also understanding the business, knowing the organization that you're working with, understanding its pain points, understanding the potential implications of decisions that you're making or that you're recommending to executives, and using the information you have to really predict and warn them of possible scenarios. So being able to pull all of those different things together can be quite hard to take in that giant, 1,000-foot high-level view of the world. But I think people will thank you if you're the one that's maintaining visibility of the 75 different moving parts of an IR op and just enabling them as specialists to go and do their role. So use your knowledge to really think outside the box, and just remember that you're empowered to make some cool decisions here, or you're really empowered through your amazing strategic and analytical skills to give someone the right information to go and do something different. I think that's a really, really useful thing. And it could be quite hard when you've got a whole bunch of people focused on the extreme technical detail to kind of just take a moment and lift yourself back up and think about the bigger picture, think about your broader incident response operation and how that fits into the rest of the organization. And lastly, being able to identify good opportunities. So who else in the organization can help you? Individuals, teams? What about external organizations? Is it a time that you call in some expertise from another incident response provider? Or do you contact the ACSC perhaps because you really need some of their knowledge, or you're hoping that they've got some secret source material that can maybe help you out? Who can bolster your skills? Who can bolster the capability of your team? What kind of areas are you strong in? What areas do you need help in? Again, internal and external to the organization. If it's a true crisis, organizations should absolutely be working together, supporting each other. Cyber impacts us all, so there's no point in one of us suffering a cyber incident. We know it's going to happen to all of us at some point in time. What are the other things that you can do to really help drive your incident response operation forward? They could be big, they could be small, could be as little as making sure that you're feeding and supporting your team, giving them energy drinks, Red Bull, buying coffee, all the way through to somehow supporting some crazy new idea about disconnecting from the internet for 72 hours just for fun to really get an understanding of what the actor's done on your network. Thinking about things as, I guess, differently as possible and looking at those different opportunities that you see so that you can take advantage of them. I guess an incident is always a good time to try and take advantage of it. And so we want to be not too outrageous, but we also want to remember that it is a good time to maybe put forward some ideas that you've had or that your team is trying to work towards, get some of that capability that you might be lacking in, that you've been pestering your CISO or your CIO for a while. That could be a new tool. Don't go panic buying, don't go hoarding toilet paper, but just maybe have a think about some of those things that you really need that you perhaps haven't had an opportunity to get before. There's no shame in doing it. After an incident, I'm pretty sure most organizations go and spend a whole lot of money on a whole lot of kit. So you may as well make sure that it's the right kind of stuff that you actually need and that you're actually going to use to help, your SOC, your IR function improve. So I think, we've done a very quick run through, and I'm conscious that I am standing between you and dinner, virtually, not physically. But if we can kind of add some of these skill sets in, and really we're talking about kind of, 4 broad common skills. No one has to be an expert in any one of them, but just having that, I guess, as in the back of your mind is some additional things that we could all work to really, really improve IR and make it that really, really organizational function. I still think that's a really good outcome. Incident response is absolutely a team sport. Again, there's no I in team, but it really is a team sport. We all need these diverse skills to come together so that we can do good incident response. And I think if we're doing good incident response, then we're really limiting harm, we're limiting the impact of an incident, we're limiting the cost of an incident to an organization, and we're all fundamentally doing our jobs a fair bit better. So just very lastly, I think team development is one of the most important things that we can do. As a manager, I think it's something we should all be investing in for our staff. So whether that's sending them on courses, giving them work time to come to awesome events like this on the weekend, for instance, all of those things, if you can help build your team, if you can build technical and soft skills, you're going to have much well-rounded individuals, you're going to have a much more cohesive team, and they're going to be able to do the job much better when the time inevitably comes that they have to get in and do that incident response op. I think that kind of goes for a lot of organizational roles, not just IR, but I think it is something that we kind of forget about. We often just focus on one skill set. So that might be forensics or one particular tool, but those soft skills are still really, really important. When you combine them with the tech skills, you've got an awesome person, you've got an awesome team. If you can balance that in your team, you're going to have the best life as a manager. It's going to be so much easier. So that's definitely what I try and build in my teams. And I hope it's something that you guys can all start to build if you're not doing it already. So that's it from me. 1 minute over time. Apologies for that, guys. Please feel free to reach out to me on email, LinkedIn. I'm around in the Slack if you want to DM me as well. I hope you found that at least a little bit useful. And I'm more than happy to talk about anything that I've mentioned today more with anyone. I like to talk. I like to have coffee. I like to have a drink of wine. So please feel free to hit me up. Braced through it.
Look, there we go. I got it this time.
Because I was reminding you.
Yeah, you were reminding me. That's awesome. Thank you very much, Ryan. I know there's a lot of people in the ComfyCon chat who, including Shanna and I, who have been saying preach for the last 30 minutes of your talk.
I'll have to go read it.
You've managed to eloquently describe the interaction between the sort of technical sides and the non-technical sides. And what I really love is talking about that bigger picture piece. Like, if it's one thing that I try and talk to people about, it's you are a little cog, you are enabling everything else, and there's a bigger picture around you. So thank you very much for presenting on that today.
Awesome. So happy to do it.
No worries.